At this point, it might be thought useful to give a definition of ethics. However, a useful definition of ethics is not possible, and we should be clear about the reason why. A definition, in order to be useful, must define the matter in terms that are simpler and more basic. Defining something obscure in terms that are equally obscure is a useless definition. So a useful definition of ethics must appeal to things more basic and simpler than ethics itself. Nothing seems to fit that bill. Nothing seems more basic than ethics that could serve as terms to define ethics. Let me illustrate this with a couple of examples. Suppose we define ethics as a study of what is the right thing to do. The idea of the right thing to do is hardly simpler or more basic than the idea of ethics. Or suppose we define ethics as a study of what is good. The correctness of this definition depends upon understanding that by good we mean the ethically good rather than aesthetically good or socially useful. Again, the idea of ethically good is hardly simpler or more basic than the idea of ethics itself. So it would seem that a useful definition of ethics is not available. Finally, we should look at a definition like ethics is what most people have said is right. Here we should note that the definition is simply false. What is right or wrong and what people say is right or wrong is two different things. A simple glance at history shows that most people have sometimes been wrong about ethics. For example, there was a time when most people thought slavery was okay. This definition is also incorrect because it does not allow for the possibility of criticizing what people believe is ethical. The lack of a useful definition does not mean that we cannot systematically study and analyze ethics. As an analogy, consider the study of physics. You're not going to get a useful definition of space or of time for the reasons I've just given. Nevertheless, this lack is not an obstacle to the study of physics. So, we can begin to analyze ethics by clearly distinguishing ethics from things it might be confused with. But before doing that, I should first register a note of terminology. I treat the terms ethics and morals as equivalent. Some people have tried to draw a distinction, but nothing of that sort has ever become standard. Most scholars use them interchangeably, and so will I. Ethics must be distinguished from law, religion, or tradition or etiquette. This can sometimes be difficult since they can overlap. That is to say, for example, something can be both a matter of ethics and a matter of law. Nevertheless, it is important to keep ethics separate from law, religion, or tradition, since it affects our understanding of ethical theory. Let's begin with law. Certainly, many ethical claims are also laws. For example, murder is both against ethics and against the law. But this reflects only an overlap. There are laws that have nothing to do with ethics. For example, traffic laws. It is hardly a matter of ethics whether cars should drive on the right or left side of the road. And there are ethical issues that are not embodied in the law. For example, in general, it is morally wrong to break a promise for no reason to a friend. It is not, however, illegal in general to do so. Ethics and the law are distinct. That's why it makes sense to ask about the morality of some law. A common objection to laws supporting, for example, racial discrimination is that they are unethical, not illegal. Furthermore, it also makes sense to ask how much of morality should be a matter of law. The contrast between religion and ethics is more complicated. In part, this is because many people learn ethics from religion or from religious instructors. Many religious stories often express lessons in ethics. Indeed, some people find it hard to believe how they could have learned ethics without religion. Nevertheless, ethics and religion are distinct. And here I should note that I'm talking about all the major religions. I certainly do not want to suggest that all that I truly do not want to suggest that I've surveyed all religions. But as far as I know, there are no exceptions to the distinction between individual religions and ethics. First of all, we should note that there are religious claims that have nothing to do with ethics. A good example are dietary restrictions. Many religions prohibit eating certain foods or eating at all at certain times. Judaism and Islam prohibit eating pork. Hinduism prohibits eating beef, and Catholicism for a long period prohibited eating meat on Fridays. None of these restrictions are a matter of ethics. They are a matter of religious duty only. Secondly, we should note that there can be conflicts between the claims of ethics and the claims of a religion. One of the most famous examples of this comes from the story of Abraham and Isaac that is common in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It is morally wrong to kill an innocent child, and yet Abraham was required, according to the religion, to kill his son. The religious demand, kill your son, clearly contradicts the ethical demand, killing your son is wrong. Now, some might point out that Abraham does not kill Isaac in the end. God rescinds the order at the last minute. But that doesn't remove the conflict in this case between the demand of a religion and the demands of ethics. Intending and seriously planning to kill an innocent child is morally wrong, even if at the last minute the act is not committed. Indeed, some writers claim that some of the power of the story lies in Abraham knowingly setting the demands of religion and the orders from God above the demands of ethics. As we can see, the distinction between ethics and religion is not an observation made outside of the religion or from an anti-religion stance. It is a distinction that the different religions themselves acknowledge. That is to say, all religions acknowledge that someone can be an ethical person even though that person is outside the religion. People outside the religion may not see the light or the truth, but at least, in some cases, they can be trusted and are honest in their commercial dealings. They can be ethical. They just will not receive the rewards of the religion. In other words, religions acknowledge a distinction between being ethical and being pious. One can be ethical without being pious. Unfortunately, the distinction between religion and ethics, between the good person and the pious person, is often blurred or unrecognized. This is because there is a significant overlap between religious and ethical demands. Many people do learn ethics from religion or religious leaders, and often, especially with children, the motivation for ethics is the reward of religion. For example, if you are not good, you won't go to heaven. However, as adults, we should understand such remarks in a way similar to, if you are not good, you will go to prison. It's an acknowledgement that in many cases, ethics and religion, or ethics and the law, overlap. Nevertheless, they are distinct. Finally, we should note that ethics is distinct from custom, tradition, or etiquette. While there can, of course, be overlaps between ethics and custom, the fact that something is traditional or customary does not mean that it is ethical. Traditional practices or behaviors can be immoral. A clear illustration of this is slavery. Everyone agrees that slavery, both the institution and the practice, is and was immoral. Nevertheless, slavery was customary and widely practiced at one time, which means that it was accepted. It does not mean, however, that it was ever moral. This is not to deny that traditions can be important. It is to say that the importance of traditions or customs does not lie in their embodying what is morally right or good. I won't discuss this distinction in any more detail, since hardly anyone believes that tradition is the mark of the ethical. Let's pause now and try to consolidate some of what we've learned with an exercise.